We're rolling.
Welcome to the REI Rookies Podcast.
The Real Estate Investing Rookies Podcast, episode number 63, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Josh Koth.
And I'm Jack Haas.
And here at REI Rookies, we believe in a couple of key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
Well, this week we're going to talk a little bit about our first experience with a hard money lender.
It's kind of interesting because when you're listening to podcasts and getting educated on real estate investing, and before you start doing any deals, you hear all these terms, right? Wholesaling, hard money lenders, private lenders. These terms are kind of thrown about: double closings, assignment of contract. You don't really know what they mean or where they fit into your business. So it's kind of fun as we progress in our journey. We get to try some of these different techniques, and hard money lending is one of those items we kind of wanted to check off the old bucket list as far as investing goes. And so we were able to utilize one for a particular transaction we did recently, and we kind of wanted to share our experience to maybe give some other rookies and newbies out there some insight into how that process went and when you could possibly use a hard money lender for your benefit. So why don't we talk a little bit about, first of all, why you would use a hard money lender, what type of situations?
Well, in many cases, in our case, it was because we wanted a short-term loan to close on a property and then refinance it on the back end with our traditional bank. But the secondary reason, I think it's ideal maybe for flippers, where they can use that money for short-term, maybe 6 months, get the flip taken care of. And in many cases, these hard money lenders will loan you the money for the material and the rehab itself on top of the purchase.
Right. So an important distinction of using a hard money lender, versus, well, let's get into what I consider the three main types of financing, right? There's the normal bank financing, like everybody buys their personal residence. Typically you put 20% down and the bank funds the rest. And that's probably your cheapest money out there. And then what we've used in the past is private money. So that's anything you can negotiate between you and a private individual. You use their money and you pay them a rate of return that you both agree on over a specific term that you both agree on. That could be short-term or long-term. And a hard money lender is typically not used for a buy and hold scenario. I think there are some of these hard money lenders do both, but I don't know if you'd call it hard money if you're really holding it for a long term. It's just kind of an arm. They're trying to capture some more business, some peripheral business along with the hard money lending side. So a hard money lender is typically you're paying some points and some higher interest rates. So you would want to utilize that for fairly short term. So like you said, the longest I would ever use hard money is for the duration of a flip. So usually about 6 months or so. Otherwise, it reaches kind of a point of diminishing returns, truly diminishing returns. And it's not even a euphemism. It's just diminishing returns.
Yeah.
In the truest sense. So that's about the only scenario where we'd use it. Also, in the situation we used it in, which was to acquire just for cash acquisition of a property and then to do a cash out refinance after we took possession. So 30 to 60 days is our timeline. And we're kind of right in the middle of that right now. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how we selected a hard money lender. We don't need to get into the specifics of who we use, but just kind of what were we thinking as we were searching around and looking for recommendations?
Well, one of the things that we needed was somebody to lend in Minnesota and or North Dakota. Well, we did find out in our situation is that it really depends on the state. Not all of them can lend in all 50 states. I mean, we actually found a couple private or hard money lenders, one that loans in North Dakota and the other one in Minnesota. And between the two, now we can be fully covered. But you do have to check out the state requirements because some of them just won't touch you.
Right. So you'd hate to get through the process and then you tell them the house you're buying is in a certain state and have them say, well, we don't even lend in that state. So that's something I didn't realize was a thing. I just figured they all loan nationally, but it's not the case. So you want to verify that the asset you're borrowing on is one that they can actually lend in a state they can lend money in. So that's an important distinction. And now when you found the one we used, did you look for recommendations like in online forums or talk to other investors, or how did you end up selecting the ones that we actually applied with?
Yeah, well, actually went to Bigger Pockets. Okay. They had a single page of all the hard money lenders. You can do a Google search, of course, or but I always start with some place where you have a good starting point in some people's experience. I actually blasted a few private hard money lenders to see what type of response we would get. And there were two in particular that were very quick to respond. And in those two cases, they were even calling me by phone within a couple hours each. So.
Now, yeah, there's one thing that we've started to do, and this applies to contractors when we're selling a property. One strategy we always employ is to keep our foot on the gas on all fronts until something actually happens. So we'll keep marketing a property even though we have a potential, buyer or possible like lease option tenant or seller financing buyer. We'll keep marketing the property just to keep our options open until that money is actually in hand and the contract is signed. So we took the same approach with these hard money lenders. Let's apply to a few of them and just keep going down the road with all of them just to make sure that when we get to the end, somebody's actually going to come out at the finish line and fund the deal. You never want to just think, well, one returned our call, so we're done now. Let's just use that one. You have to keep pursuing multiple lines. And that's something we learned, or I learned, I should say, from the Flipping Blueprint book by Luke Weber, where he just says you always have to be pursuing, and his example was contractors, right? Even when you have a good contractor, you always have to be pursuing more and looking for better deals. And when you're going to get a bid on a rehab, you want to probably tell 10 people and maybe 3 of them will show up and that'll actually yield 1 or 2 bids. So, don't count on one single entity to solve all your problems.
Yeah. And we, like you said, we really pursued these through the duration. There was a couple points where I have to be honest, where they kept asking for more information, and we get closer and closer to the closing date. We even had to move the closing date at one point to accommodate the hard money lender.
You're kind of blazing through a lot of these topics here, so let's take this a little bit slower here. So when you were going through the application process, well, here's a little bit of my perception of hard money.
Well, what I was going to get at though, Josh, is that we, like you said, we were going through the whole process and all foot on the gas, and we followed through its completion. There has been many points in this situation where I actually thought we were going to just kind of give up on it. I mean, it was a pretty good telling of you got to stay persistent and just keep serving it up.
Yeah, I mean that goes for all of these, any vendor or contractor or subcontractor you're dealing with. In any of these strategies in real estate, persistence is key. But this is one area where hard money lending differed from my perception. I assumed hard money lenders, you basically tell them about the asset and they go, wow, that's a great deal. Here's my money. Right? Yeah. All they care about is the asset. Okay. Oh, it's ARV X amount. You're buying it for X amount. Oh, that's a no-brainer. There's tons of profit there. It meets our lending thresholds. And here's our money. When would you like it? Okay. And because in my mind, that was the difference. That's why you're paying the higher rates of return. Because if you have to jump through a ton of hoops, why wouldn't you go to a regular bank, right? Because you want easier qualifying. Now, reality differed significantly in that regard. Talk a little bit about everything we had to submit to get the deal funded.
We had to submit my personal information. So they did a complete personal underwriting, checked my credit report, everything there. We had to provide articles of incorporation, details on the business, and how many properties we had flipped or retailed in the past. Provide a list of all of those properties with the addresses so that they could verify some of that information.
Right.
We had to provide some bank records to prove that we had the 20% that met their requirements.
Right. Here's another, let's stop right there for 1 second, because that's another important point. This differs from using a private lender. Private lender, you can fund 100% of the deal. A hard money lender, you can't. Right. So you're still going to have some skin in the game. So you're not going to be able to get away with them bringing in 100% of the acquisition price. At least the ones that we talk to, they want you to have some skin in the game. So again, another negative in my mind for using hard money lenders.
Then we had to go through the application process, which included us. So this is the thing that I think kind of surprised me, is that there are, in this case, we had 3 points we had to pay on the deal. So you have to be ready for that hit right off the bat. I mean, that's quite a bit. Make sure.
And just so rookies don't misunderstand what we're speaking about. So a point would be a percentage of the overall loan. So if you're loaning borrowing $100,000, that would be $1,000 would be 1 point. 3 points would be 3,000. So, and I think this loan is for 120, right?
Yep.
So what's that? 3,600?
Yeah, it ended up being 3,600.
Yeah. And that's just a fee. That's a straight up expense. Doesn't matter if you pay the loan back 1 day later, you're out that money right off the gates, right?
Right. And then there were additional fees on top of that. So we had an application fee, and then a appraisal fee, and it was in the end that was an appraisal down payment, because when the full appraisal had happened, they had to expedite it on top of it. So there was an additional $500 fee for that. So in the end, there was probably another $1,000 in fees on top of the 3 points.
Right. And that's another downside to using a hard money lender versus a private lender or using the banks that we work with. An appraisal. We don't have to do appraisals when you use a private money lender. They're just trusting your track record, and it's whatever deal you can work out with your private money lender. So that was a pain, because we had to get a hold of our seller, get let into the property when they had tenants in there, so an appraisal could occur. So it's more time consuming, more costly. It was just annoying, honestly. We're not used to that level of scrutiny. So we found that really annoying. And then the funny thing was, when they kept giving you lists, you would submit everything, and then I swear the next day or two you would say, that there's another roadblock, or we got to submit another 3 or 4 things. And that happened a good 3 or 4 different times, right?
Yeah. Like the first batch, like I mentioned, the documents that they needed was the entity documents, articles of organization, operating agreement, EIN, certificate of good standing. You have to order that from your state agency, and there's typically a fee associated with that. Homeowner, the insurance policy, and then there was requirements specifically associated with that insurance policy, and the certificate that you received from the insurer had to be, those line items had to be in there in the binder in order for it to pass.
I'm getting annoyed all over again. It was just
full recent bank statements and showing that you have enough closing costs in reserve for the past 6 months.
Oh, good.
Title and closing agent contact information, copy of my driver's license. And then that was just round 1.
Right. And then another 2 or 3 times after that, they added more things on, to the point where we had to delay closing. Luckily, we had enough cash on hand. We were able to fund the deal and, get it closed, and everything, the seller got his money. So in the end, we ended up having to kick in money anyways, just to not make it a pain in the butt for the seller. Yeah, but funding it on our money lender's part, ended up getting delayed. So again, in the end, it was pretty annoying. A lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of expense, and we ended up having to delay the closing anyway. So really, that's not a lot of good points. And I don't know how much earlier before closing did we start this process.
Gee, I want to say 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
And, maybe that was naivete on our part, that 2 to 3 weeks is not enough for a hard money lender to perform. Maybe that was unrealistic expectations on our part. Maybe if they had a good 6 weeks, none of this wouldn't have been an issue. But you still would have had to jump through all the same hoops. We just wouldn't have ran into the delay. So,
and then what I also thought was interesting is that, so you're dealing with a salesperson, and they get your basic information and they kind of go through an interview process. And then they pass your file on to an underwriter who basically does the same thing. And then I get a list of additional documents that she needs. And then we get pre-approved for your final approval or something. It was almost silly with the redundant nature of their emails.
Yeah, it's like, just tell us if you're going to fund the deal or not.
And then we found out that it was then going to a final approval stage. So there was like 3 different stages, and every time I thought, okay, we're finally done.
Yep.
It would go to yet another underwriter
who had more demands.
Yeah.
So, honestly, in our experience, I don't know that we would ever use them again, only as a last resort. That's what I'll say. Like, if we just have too many deals going at once and we're, all our money we have access to, all our private money and other capital is currently out in deals, and we just run across a deal that's too good to pass up and we can't wholesale it or whatever, and we end up having to acquire it ourselves. That's the only scenario I can see that we would use a hard money lender again. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the only thing that I can think of is that because we've gone through the gauntlet this time around,
right.
Hopefully it would be easier the second time through. I mean, they already have our information. We've now paid back a loan. We have some of that relationship built up.
That's true. And you wouldn't have to personally qualify it. All that stuff would be already in the can. So still, they're going to evaluate the deal as hard, and you still have to have skin in the game, and you're still going to have to pay all the fees and points.
Right.
And they still have to do an appraisal. So for all those reasons, even if the hoop jumping was a little bit less, I'd still only use them as a last resort after all of their sources of funds were exhausted.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that. I mean, it's downright expensive to use them.
Yeah. Yep. And so, all people out there considering different funding sources, I would much rather spend, just cold call a bunch of potential private lenders and try to raise more private capital than use a hard money lender as, where I'm spending my time. Much rather spend the time raising private capital. It's just so much easier, and you come in a position of leverage, and it just doesn't. It feels like you're having to have your hand out and beg for money all over again, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good feeling to be in that position, especially when you're potentially dependent on them giving you approval, to close on the deal. So,
now you made a really good point there. The amount of time that I spent going through this process and being on the phone, collecting documents, getting things notarized, what have you. We probably could have found the private money by then.
Yeah, if you just would have called.
It was lost. That's another lost opportunity.
Yeah, if you just could have called 20 more potential private lenders, you maybe could have raised the money that way. So that's always going to be our default, is we're going to put effort into that from going forward, just because the flexibility, the terms or whatever you can work out between people is just so much simpler. So that's our personal kind of experience using a hard money lender for the first time, with the caveat that obviously we used one, right? So I'm sure hard money lenders differ, and there's all kinds of them out there, good ones, bad ones. I mean, I can't say that they did a bad job. It was just the nature of the beast. It's not as flexible and easy as using private money. Another thing I'll say too, and just a point of clarification, another tip from Luke Weber in the Flipping Blueprint is, when you're looking at hard money lending and doing Google searches, make sure you're not finding a broker. Okay, so somebody that allegedly has access to a ton of, funds and hard money out there. You want to find the actual hard money lender doing the lending themselves, because a lot of these people represent themselves as a hard money broker. And I can, and one of the red flags is if they say they can loan from 5,000 up to 5 million or something, some crazy amount. I mean, hard money lenders have a little bit more strict requirements on that. So that's another tip from Luke Weber in the Flipping Blueprint. Make sure you find the actual hard money lender, not a broker.
So I am moving all around the office right now just to show one quick thing.
And if
it's a visual aid for those people who aren't watching video.
Yeah, he's holding two. Those people listening, he's holding two closing folders from our title company.
Yeah. So Regency Title in Fargo, awesome company, by the way. But this is our normal closing document. You can see our folder.
Yeah, it has about 10 pages in it.
Yeah.
10 pieces of paper.
So, and then the one with our hard money lender. It's so thick it almost doesn't shut.
Right. And it's at least 10 times as heavy. Killed about 5 more trees.
And it's ripped the folder.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were there considerably longer for that closing, and they had to verify every single line item, including one page that was interesting. There was a page that said, I can clearly read this and understand all of the documentation here in this folder. And then I had to handwrite it out to demonstrate my grasp of the English language.
Yeah, that's called CYA.
Yeah.
They're covering their asses big time.
Yeah.
They don't want to ever be in hard money lenders' defense. I'll say one thing. They deal with a lot of fly-by-night people that maybe watch some flipping shows and think they can get into flipping, have no experience. So, they have to protect their lenders, their investors, I should say, the people that are kicking money into this product. So they have to really vet the people that they're giving money to. So I guess that's the reason for all the scrutiny. But because of that, for that reason, we definitely would use them as a last resort only.
Well, and that's something that reminds me, because of the experience that you and I've had in this real estate investing and the flipping and the transactions, we actually got their best rate. So those people that come in new, it is still based on the asset that you're trying to fund, but it also depends on your experience. So if you're really new, you're going to see a much higher interest rate.
Because that's riskier to them.
Right.
Because if you've never done it before, the chances of you making a profit are a lot less than somebody that's done a bunch of flips.
Yep.
So that makes sense. I'm fine with that as a sliding scale. I wouldn't mind paying a higher rate if it was my first time ever doing a deal. So, I get what they're doing. I get whether they have to protect their investors. I mean, honestly, they're just they're like a middleman, right? They are paying their investors a certain percentage, and they're making a spread, a pretty slim spread over the top of that. So, it's a tough business, I'm sure, being a hard money lender. But they have some horror stories about us, right? Mm-hmm. Not us in particular, but flippers or investors. I'd like to see the default rates. How many people crash and burn in the middle of a project and don't pay back the money? It has to be a lot higher than, your typical mortgage lender. So that's the reason for all the barriers to entry. But still, for us as fairly now experienced real estate investors, it's still going to be the last option, just because, we don't have to jump through those hoops anymore as much. So that's something we're going to definitely deprioritize and always go after private money first before we would ever use a hard money lender again.
So with that, why don't we jump into our Coach's Corner and some recommendations this week? And I just received a Chris Prefontaine book, Real Estate on Your Terms. We had Chris on our podcast not too long ago. So I just wanted to give a call out to Chris and thank you for sending us a copy of the book. But a great resource, great book, recommended, and we'll put a link on our Patreon page and some additional details there. Which reminds me, on our Patreon page as well, we do have a list of book recommendations, all the books we've recommended in the podcast over the last year. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Awesome. All right. And if you have any questions for us or want to give us any feedback, shoot us an email, info@reirookies.com. Head over to iTunes, give us a rating, a 5-star rating. We'd love that even more. Give us a review. If you want to type something nice about us, we would definitely love that too. Also, if you have some money sitting on the sidelines, what do we talk about? We should spend more time raising private money, right?
Yeah.
Prepare for a pitch. So go to investwithvpp.com if you would like to hear some more information about how you could potentially be a private lender and profit from the deals that we're doing.
And remember, get off the bench
and get into the game. We'll see you next time.